Hey guys, good evening. I hope all of you are having a wonderful day. So, as you know, this is me, Siva Prasad, and I'm bringing this series to you on Science and Technology NCERT textbook. We started right from the scratch. We started with Class 6 NCERT, and in the previous two videos, I have been taking lessons on Class 7 NCERT. I'll be giving you a quick recap of whatever we did in the previous classes. Then I will be starting with today's topic. So the course is being presented by me, Siva Prasad. I teach live on Unacademy Plus. Alright, so we talked about heat, the concept of thermodynamics in the very first video on Class 7 NCERT. Then following that in the second video on Class 7 NCERT, we talked about reproduction in plants. I told you about different types of reproduction like asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. In different types of asexual reproduction, we talked about vegetative propagation, we talked about budding, we talked about fragmentation, we talked about spore formation, etc. Alright, so these are various topics we did in the previous class. Then we talked about sexual reproduction in plants. I told you about the process of pollination, fertilization, and seed formation and fruit formation. So this is where we stopped in the previous lesson. I remember I asked you a question also in the previous lesson. We are used to saying that land heats up faster while ocean, sea, they don't heat up so faster. What is the reason behind this? I hope you had an opportunity to Google this to try to find out an answer for this particular question. In case you have not found out an answer, I will be sharing the answer at the end of today's video. Alright, so let us start with today's topic. We are going to talk about soil. So if you see soil around you, what are the various factors responsible for formation of soil? You have parent rock, right? This provides rock the texture, mineral, structure, pH value, porosity, etc. That means this is a rock. This is called as the parent rock. Over the period of time, this parent rock, it undergoes erosion, it undergoes weathering, right? This is broken down by the actions of the wind, by the actions of water, by the actions of biota, plants, etc. They are, trying to thrust in through with their roots. Many other organisms, they are trying to break down this rock. So what happens is this parent rock, this rock, starts to break down into smaller and smaller parts, hence forming this soil. So if you look at soil, the texture of the soil is determined by the parent rock. The mineral, what is the mineral composition of the soil? That is again determined by the parent rock that got weathered. The structure is also determined. Similarly, the pH value, I hope you know about the potency scale, right? This tells you whether the soil that you have, it is acidic or it is basic. So that pH value is again dependent on this particular parent rock. And if you look at porosity means how much holes do we have over there? How easy is it for water to seep in through, etc. That is porosity. How porous is it, right? That is also determined by the parent rock. This is one thing, the parent rock. Then climate. Climate decides the agent of erosion. As I told you, the parent rock, this parent rock, it undergoes active erosion, right? What are the various agents of erosion? It could be wind, it could be water, it could be glacier, or maybe it could be a combination of all these factors, right? So the climate, for example, if you're on mountain top, then you have glaciers. Glaciers could be an active agent of erosion, right? If you are in desert area, then wind could be an active agent of erosion. So that's what the climate, it basically determines which is the agent of erosion, and also the climate determines the intensity of the erosion. How fast are you going to get eroded? Will it take 10 years, 20 years, 30 years for you to get eroded into soil? That is again determined by the climate in that particular region, right? Then the third thing that determines is relief, right? For example, if you look at plains you have well developed thick layer of soil. That is the reason you see plains are very, very densely populated. Plains are intensively cultivated. In India also, if you see northern plains, right, they are responsible for majority of the food crop production in our country. Why? Because they have well developed a thick layer of soil. On the other hand, if you look at the slopes, there is only a thin layer of soil. Why? Because if you are lying on this soil, on a slope, there is soil. So as soon as if there is wind blowing, there is water, rainfall, etc. What happens? It is easier for the soil to get easily washed away. So that is the reason you see in slopes and all, there is only a thin layer of soil. Alright. Next is biota. Remember the microorganisms that is thriving at this area, the vegetation, humus, etc. This also is an important factor for formation of soil. Okay, these are the 4 important factors. Some people tend to write time also, because it's not a small process, it's not an easy process. This takes thousands and thousands of years for the formation of soil. So therefore time is also an important factor of formation of soil. Alright, it depends on which textbook you are referring to. Even in NCERT, they don't mention time, but in many places I have seen people mentioning time. So it's okay, it's alright, you can mention it, not a big deal. Alright. Let me tell you about two concepts that I'm going to discuss with you. One is called as capillary action. The other concept is called as leaching. Alright. Capillary action, remember, it happens in hot and dry climate. You have to remember where what kind of action takes place. Right? Where rate of evaporation is faster. That means if you go to hot and dry climate, the rate of evaporation is going to be obviously faster because it is after all hot and dry. The rate of evaporation, that means how soon can water evaporate and become water vapor, right? Higher the temperature, faster is the rate of evaporation. We are talking about hot and dry climates. Obviously, we are talking about extremely high temperatures or at least high temperatures. If the temperature is very high, the rate of evaporation is very high. The water will get easily evaporated. It will convert itself from liquid water into water vapor, right? So when this happens, the salts in the soil, they tend to move to upper layers. Right? I told you about capillary action when we were talking about the concept of transpiration. Also, I gave you an example of you trying to take in coke using a straw, right? So when you are pulling in the straw, so you are creating a suction pull, right? So that is what is forcing the bottom, the liquid from the bottom to reach your mouth. That's the same thing that is happening over here, except that there is no external force that is applied. All right. The salts in the soil, they tend to move to upper layers. Because salts that are supposed to be beneath the layers of soil, it is moving to upper layers. You will see that the soil salinity is very high. Salinity means the salt content. Salt content in the soil is very high. Alright, when we say salt, we have this tendency to normally correlate it with common salt, that is sodium chloride, but there are different types of salts, right? So you see soil salinity is very high. The salt content in the soil is very, very high. This is because of capillary action. Usually you will see such soil has significant amount of calcium salts. This is capillary action in soil. Along the same line, let's try to discuss one more thing that occurs. It is called as leaching in soil. Alright, it's called as leaching in soil. This happens in hot and humid conditions. Remember, this was in hot and dry conditions because you wanted rate of evaporation to be very high. This happens in hot and humid conditions. Humid matlab you are going to have a lot of humidity is going to be very high. That means there is too much amount of water content in the atmosphere, right? So in these areas you will have significantly high rainfall. Due to high rainfall, what happens? Silica in the soil, it tends to move to the bottom layer, while iron and aluminum, they tend to stay at the upper layers of the soil, right? So this, because of this, you see it becomes acidic and it has a reddish appearance. Alright, so this is called as leaching in soil. Alright, so along the same lines, let's try to discuss one more concept that is given in your NCERT. This is called as soil profile. Alright, so you have A horizon, B horizon, C horizon, and then you have the bedrock. Right, let's try to understand the soil profile much better. The uppermost horizon is generally dark in color, as it is rich in humus and minerals. Right, if you look at the uppermost layer, it is dark in color. This is rich in humus. I already told you what humus is. Humus is basically a dark colored substance. It is not easily degraded. That means this humus, it tends to stay in the soil for longer duration of time. Since humus tends to stay in the soil for longer duration of time, it becomes a reservoir of minerals and nutrients. Lot of minerals, nutrients, etc. they get accumulated in this humus, right? The humus, remember, because it is a reservoir of minerals and nutrients, it makes the soil very, very fertile, right? And it provides nutrients to the growing plant. It's a reservoir of nutrients. Obviously, it is going to provide all sort of micronutrients and macronutrients to the plant that is growing, right? This is because of the presence of humus. This layer, if you see the top layer, uppermost horizon, it is generally soft, it is porous, and it can retain more amount of water. It is also sometimes called as the topsoil, right? You might be familiar with this. Rather than as A horizon, most of you will definitely recognize it as topsoil. Alright, it is also called as A horizon. This is the topmost part of the soil. Then below the A horizon, obviously you will have B horizon. This next layer has lesser amount of humus, right? If you look at the content of humus, humus is significantly reduced. But remember, in this area you have more amount of minerals. This layer you see is generally harder and it is more compact. It is called as the B horizon. Sometimes it is also referred to as the middle layer, right? Topsoil, then you have middle layer. After that, you have the third layer. This is called as sea horizon. See ABC. It's pretty simple to understand. Third layer is called as sea layer. This is sea horizon. This is made up of small lumps of rocks with cracks and crevices. Alright, and below the sea horizon, you have something called as bedrock. If this is the bedrock, you see sea horizon is nothing but this bedrock in disintegrated format. Okay, in small format, this is basically the sea horizon. When this gets smoother further, that is your B horizon, and above all at the top you have A horizon. Remember, A horizon on the top soil, this is responsible for supporting the plants, because remember, humus etc., it has necessary porosity for water to seep through, right, for enough water retention capacity etc. That is the reason top soil is very crucial for the growth of plants. Alright, so this is a little bit about your soil profile. Let me take this discussion further and let me talk to you about the classification of the soil. Soil is classified on the basis of proportion of particles of various sizes. Right? Different types of particles are there. They vary in their size. Depending on what is the proportion. The proportion means how much amount of these particles are present. Are fine particles, small particles present in larger numbers, or coarser particles, larger particles present in higher numbers? Depending on that, we call them as sandy, clay or loamy soil. Alright? If you take a soil, it contains greater proportion of big particles. That means if you take a soil, you see majority of them is made up of big particles. That means 90% of the soil is made up of big particles. Such soil you will call it as sandy soil. Alright? Similarly, if you see the proportion of fine particles is relatively higher, if 80%, 90% of the soil is made up of fine particles, then we call it as clay soil. Alright, and finally you can obviously talk about a situation where pretty much the amount of large particles and fine particles, they are pretty much the same, right? 50-50 amount may present, and such a soil is called as loamy soil. Alright, so this is how we are classifying soil into sandy, clay and loamy soil. This is a terminology I am very sure you are very familiar with in your physical geography and especially your Indian geography. When you talk about different types of soil, which kind of soil is present in which part of the country, over there definitely you have come across these terminologies, that is sandy soil, clay soil and loamy soil. Alright, I hope everything is clear to you. Let us just discuss a little bit more about the loamy soil. Loamy soil is apparently considered as the best top soil for growing plants. Remember why so? Because loamy soil, I just told you, it has equal amounts of large and fine particles, right? The proportion, if you compare them, it is pretty much the same. Loamy soil is a mixture of sand, clay and another type of soil particles known as silt, right? Silt is something you see that occurs as deposits in the river beds. Okay, this loamy soil, it is very rich in humus, right? I just told you what is humus. Right? Humus is a dark colored substance that is present in the top soil. This humus, I told you, because of bacterial action, microorganisms actions, despite microorganisms trying to degrade this humus is very slow to degrade. That's why this humus tend to persist in the environment for long duration of time. Since this humus stays in the environment for long duration of time, it happens to be a reservoir. It starts to accumulate nutrients like nutrients and minerals, etc. Right? It happens to be very rich in nutrients. That's why it is very crucial for growth of plants. Okay. Remember, loamy soil, something special about it is that it has the right kind of holding capacity, water holding capacity. That means if it is too porous, then all the water it seeps through to the next layer. That means not enough water is left in the soil. Soil moisture is not enough to support the plant. Similarly, if it has too much amount of water holding capacity, then what happens? If it is holding on too much amount of water, this can create a situation like flooding. Right? Either of the situation is not favorable. The right kind of water holding capacity is found in this loamy soil. Alright. Next is, this brings us to a discussion, since we are talking about soil profile, etc. This brings us to a discussion on soil erosion. Soil erosion is nothing but the washing away of the top layer of the soil. What are the various causes of soil erosion? We will be taking this up multiple times of time. I will be taking the same topics up. Remember, we are following class 6 to class 12 NCERT. So obviously the concepts, only the basics are initially addressed. Over the period of time, we will be building upon these concepts. Alright, let's start with the causes of soil erosion. One cause of soil erosion is deforestation. Deforestation is nothing but chopping down of trees, cutting down of trees, etc. Why is this resulting in soil erosion? Remember, soil erosion, what happens is, if you have plants, etc., remember plants, they have roots. These roots are responsible for anchoring the plant to the soil. These roots, remember, they are holding on to the soil around them. right? So that is the reason they are protecting the soil from getting eroded away. But when you chop off this plant, what happens? These roots are no longer anchoring onto the soil. That means it is going to result in soil erosion. Why? Because now it becomes easier for the process of erosion to occur. Alright. Next time is we can have faulty agricultural practices. For example, if you don't follow terrace farming, etc. Right? This can also result in causes of soil erosion. It could be because of overgrazing. See, grazing is fine. You bring your livestock, etc. for grazing. If you overgraze them, what happens? No amount of veggies are left. No amount of green plants are left. Right? So this will also result in soil erosion. Right? It is creating a same situation. When you have vegetation, they are all holding on to the soil. They are all anchored to the ground. But because of overgrazing, when this is wiped off, what happens? You have nothing to hold on to the soil and erosion becomes easier. Then sand mining, flooding, these are all various causes of soil erosion. Alright, so to deal with soil erosion, there are various kind of methodologies, technologies that we are using. In the future lessons, I will be discussing them, and given the fact that a lot of questions, significant number of questions in the prelims examination are being asked from your environment and ecology portion and from agriculture portion, if you want to believe the 2020 trend. So these topics become all the more important. So a dedicated lesson will be scheduled where I can talk about various ways in which soil erosion can be prevented. Alright. So with this, let us stop our discussion on soil, and I will take up another chapter from class 7 NCERT, which is basically about electricity. Alright, let's talk about electricity. An electric cell, you might be aware of this. This is a source of electricity, right? You might have used it to run varied kind of electronic items, right? From your remote and small remote control cars, you are able to run so many things using this electric cell. Remember, an electric cell has two terminals. One is this positive terminal, other one is the negative terminal. One is called as positive terminal, other is called as negative terminal, right? So what we do is the positive terminal is connected to the negative terminal of the next cell. See, this is positive, it is negative. This negative terminal is connected to the positive terminal of the next cell. This positive terminal is connected to the negative terminal of the next cell. This kind of arrangement, when this combination occurs with two or more cells in such a manner, this combination is called as battery. Alright, this is an individual cell, while this is called as a battery. Alright. Let us talk about how a light bulb glows basically. An electric bulb, it has a thin wire that is called as filament. This is connected between the two terminals. Alright, if this is a bulb, inside this, usually made of tungsten, you might have seen this bulb also. When this is broken, when this connection is broken, you will see that the bulb is no longer working. So what happens is, when electricity passes through this thin wire, right? When electricity passes through this thin wire, it starts to light up. Okay, see, a filament glows when electric current passes through it. When the bulb gets fused, the filament is broken. Okay, this filament that I just showed you, if it is broken, then we say that the bulb is fused and the bulb can no longer be used. Alright. Let's talk about electric circuit. Okay. So if the circuit is closed means, if you can see over here, okay, this is the metal. So you are connecting this. If you are connecting this, the electricity, it can flow. Okay, let me just explain what is this electricity flow means. So there's this bulb, right? So sorry. Right, let's assume this is the bulb. This is the positive terminal, this is the negative terminal. Okay, when we connect them, you see that the electrons, right? Electrons are negatively charged. Electrons are present in majority in this negative terminal. From here, the electrons start to move like this, and they reach the positive terminal. Okay, it is this movement of electrons that is responsible for the flow of electricity. Remember one thing, the direction of flow of electricity is opposite to the direction of the flow of electron. If electrons are flowing from negative to positive direction, electricity flows from positive to negative direction. Alright, this is the direction of flow of electricity. So the flow of direction of electricity and electrons, they are opposite to one another. Alright, remember, it is the flow of electrons that is responsible for electricity. You might ask me this question, why not protons? Why don't they move? Remember, protons are very heavy. In comparison to protons, electrons are very light. So it is easier for electrons to move. That's why the electrons are usually mobile. The electrons are moving from negative terminal to the positive terminal. That is the direction of the flow of electrons. But the electricity direction is opposite to the flow of electrons. Right? So that's why when electricity flows through, you will see that the bulb is glowing. Alright? When this circuit is complete, for example, now the circuit is complete, it is called as a closed circuit. When you have closed the circuit, the electricity passes through and the bulb is glowing. Sometimes what can happen is the circuit might be open. Open circuit means what are you doing? You are removing this. Right? You're opening this up for some reason. Right? If that is the case, then what happens? This is called as an open circuit. Electricity does not flow through, which means the bulb does not glow. Okay, this is the difference between a closed circuit and an open circuit. Okay, see, in a closed circuit, the electric current passes from one terminal of the electric cell to the other terminal. That means which terminal to which terminal? Remember, I'm talking about electric current. That means it is flowing from positive to negative terminal. Alright? A switch, if you can see over here, this is acting as a switch. It's a simple device that is used to break the electric circuit or to complete it. So, in this case, if I keep this pin like this, what happens? It's an open circuit, so that means the circuit is broken. So there is no electricity passing through. What can I do is I can push the pin over here so that these two ends can touch. That means I'm completing the circuit. That means I have a closed circuit. If I have a closed circuit, the electrons can pass through from the negative to the positive terminal. That means electricity can flow from the positive to negative terminal. Alright. So when this happens, electric current is flowing through. Alright. Alright. Along the same lines, let's try to discuss about something that is called as electric fuse. In olden times, you might have seen something like this. You might have seen this in many devices. These are called as fuse. What exactly are fuse? There are some wires that are made from special materials. These melt very quickly and they break the circuit when electric currents, large electric currents flow through. Okay, what am I trying to tell you? Remember, I told you this is an electric circuit. Okay, what am I doing? Let me take a different color. Just over here, let me say I am putting a fuse. Right? I am putting a fuse. Alright, or maybe over here I am putting a fuse. What happens is, when electricity is normal, this fuse is perfectly fine. When high amounts of electric current flow through, this fuse, it has a low melting point. That means, when high amounts of electricity are flowing, this fuse starts to melt. If this fuse starts to melt, remember, if the fuse starts to melt, that means the circuit is broken. If the circuit is broken, if the circuit is open, electricity does not pass through. So therefore, your electric devices are protected thanks to the presence of fuse. The fuse, by having a low melting point, it is melting, right? Because high amounts of electricity is passing through. Because of this, it has started to melt. Because it is melting, the circuit is broken. Since the circuit is broken, your electronic devices are saved from this high surge. Take a high surge of electricity. Your electronic devices like your TV, microwave oven, etc. These are costly items. They are all protected from this high electricity surge. Okay, you will see that in all buildings, fuses are inserted in all electric circuits. Right, that is for this purpose. There is a maximum limit on current which can safely flow through a circuit. If by accident the current exceeds the safe limit, okay, there is a safe limit. If you are flowing through safe limit, it's perfectly fine. Sometimes when the electricity exceeds the safe limit, this wires, it may become overheated. Remember this black I just draw over here. It becomes overheated, it starts to melt. Okay, the wires, they may get overheated and they may cause fire. So this is the reason, if a proper fuse is there in the circuit, it will blow off and break the circuit. What am I trying to tell you? If you don't have fuse in the circuit, the wires will start to melt and they will catch fire. So that's why we need fuse. Fuse kya karega? When it is seeing that the electricity that is flowing through, it is more than the safe limit, what will it do? It will start to melt. If it starts to melt, then automatically what happens? The circuit is broken, which means all your electronic devices are saved. You are saved from any kind of fire. Alright, this is the work of electric fuse. But nowadays, it's very surprising to see that we don't use fuse. Even if you open your mains in your in your house also, you will have something called as MCBs nowadays. What are these MCBs? These are called as miniature circuit breakers. Right? So because there is short circuit or something, this trips down, this falls down, right? These MCBs are increasingly being used in place of fuses. What exactly are these? They look like this. Okay? They automatically turn off when the current in an electric circuit exceeds a safe limit. So that means when current that is passing through the circuit, it exceeds the safe limit. बहुत ज़्यादा flow कर रहा है, this becomes off, right? So all you have to do is you just have to put it on and the circuit is complete once again. पहले क्या होता था? Fuse used to blow off, right? When you used to use this or when you used to use this, the fuse used to go off. So you have to purchase a new fuse and you have to insert it in place of the broken fuse, right? Nowadays you have something called as MCBs. It will just strip down. in case the electricity is exceeding the safe limit. Alright, so this is the concept of electric fuse. Okay, let's quickly talk about the heating effects of electric current. Remember, when you are allowing electricity to flow through the wires, etc., they get heated up. See, the amount of heat produced in a wire depends on its material, length, and thickness. Alright, this is a chemical, this is a formula we use in physics. It's not very important with respect to a UPSC examination. If you see, an electric bulb is used for light, but it also gives heat, right? This is not very desirable because electricity, you want to consume it for the purpose of lighting, but then it is getting heated up. This is a wastage of electricity, right? The wastage can be reduced by using fluorescent light tube lights in place of bulbs. Okay, CFLs are also reduce wastage and they can be fixed in ordinary bulb holders also. Alright, so this is the heating effect of electric current. That means when electric current is flowing through a material, it tends to create some heating effects. Alright, so that is why you switch on a bulb. Okay, you switch on a normal bulb, the bulb that we have in houses. You touch them after a while, you will see that the bulb is very, very hot. Right? This is an undesirable wastage of energy, a wastage of electricity. Electricity that is supposed to be used for lighting is also being used for heating. Right? We don't want the light bulb to heat. Why? Because it is wasting electricity for us. This is the heating effect of electric current. Okay, if you touch a bulb, you will be able to see this particular phenomena happening. Similarly, you see there are these magnetic effects of electric current. What happens is, this was demonstrated. Let's say this is your electric circuit. Electricity is flowing through, right? When electricity is flowing through, you will see if you place a compass over here, the compass needle, it starts to deflect. Alright, if you reverse the flow of electric current, the deflection needle also reverses. So that means a compass is getting impacted by electricity that is passing through a circuit that is close to it. This talks about the fact that when you have electric current flowing through, it is also creating a magnetic field, right? It is having some magnetic effects also. We will talk more about this in a few more lessons when we start with class 11, 12 NCERT. We will be talking about that, right? This concept is very useful in developing something called as electromagnets. Electromagnets, you will see it is being used in electric bell, it is used in cranes, etc. Alright, fine. So let us stop over here for today's class. In the next lesson, I will be taking up future concepts, and we will also be soon starting with class 8 NCERT textbook also. I will be talking about topics related to vaccination, microorganisms, etc., vaccines and all. This will bring to us a discussion on coronavirus and how exactly does a vaccine look like, how does a vaccine function, how does our immunity, how it plays on the concept of immunological memory. All these things will be discussed in the next class that I will be uploading tomorrow. Alright, we will be talking about the plant cell, animal cell, differences between them. We'll be talking about tissues, plants, etc., tissues and cells, etc. So stay tuned on this channel. I'll see you guys in the next class at the same time. Before leaving, I would like to tell you that I also teach live on Unacademy Plus. If you're interested in subscribing to Unacademy Plus, you can use my referral code, that is AKM Siva. This will give you a 10% off on your subscription. Alright, so this is all for today. Hope to see you guys in future classes. Bye bye, have a good day.